Okay. Dr. Hedel Gemara. Tanya Kavase the Rav Zocher ben Tesha Shon of Yernachad. Haba al Habahema. Who's Bal Abahema ben Kedarka ben Shaloi Kedarka. The Isha Hamavias Abahema Alea. Ben Kedarka ben Shaloi Kedarka is going to be Chayiv. Dorish Rab Nachman by Rab Chisda. Be Isha Shnei Mishkavos. We know it says Mishkave Isha to tell us that Sai Kedarka and Sai Shaloi Kedarka is considered a bia, and therefore any isser involved would be considered having been a isser. But uba behema, it's only mishkavech. Whereas Dr. Rashi, why? The like sivba mishkaveh. So Dr. Rashi, inyan revia ka'amar. We're talking about when an animal is penetrated. So isha hanirvas la behema. If a woman becomes nirvas la behema, it doesn't make a difference how she's nirvas, sai kedarka and shaloi kedarka. The same way, if a person's boiler, the iser is ben kedarka ben shaloi kedarka, so if she becomes nevelas to a behema, it's also in those same fashions. But the ilu bevilas adam leitzak where Rav Nachman lememar the krei tuva umas nisika. Rav Nachman is not addressing the halacha of what she has to do to be over when she's nevelas to a person. That has been discussed many times. Rav Nachman is discussing what has to happen in order for her to be nevelas to a behema. So what Rav Chisda is saying is that by a behema, that's nivelas, only if it's nivelas kedarka and not shaloi kedarka. Frek the Gemara, maske flora papa adarabba, isha de urchahi amishkov mechayiv ameda machrina loy mechayiv. By a woman where it's normal for her to have relations with people, there it would make sense to make a distinction that kedarka gives her hana. That's where there's going to be a chiyuv. Shaloi kedarka, there's no hana. Maybe there's no chiyuv. There, it would be logic to make such a suggestion. We know that's not true, but there that would be logical. But behema de la vorcha, but it's completely not normal to be boil a behema or to be nevelas from a behema. Then anything, any penetration of any type should be usher because it's not a logical activity anyway. So therefore, Rav Papa didn't like the distinction that Rav Nachman made. Mask of Laura Papa Adraba Isha the Urcha Bebeila. I made him the Urcha. The normal way to do it, he mechayiv. I made him Achrina. Dani Shaloi Kedaka Loi Dein Urcha Dein Hana also Maruba. But Behema de la Vorcha Lo Voyala. Yesh name Shavan. It's not normal for someone to be nevelas by a behema. So therefore, once we're talking about crazy things happening, any fashion should be the violation. The Papa Minasfar didn't like it. Rav Nachman said. Tanya, Zocher ben Tesha Shon of Yemechad, Haba al Habehema, ben Kedarka, ben Shaloi Kedarka, will be the violation of our Shrechav and Behema, and the Bechimiza. We Isha Hamavias and Behema Allah, ben Kedarka, ben Shaloi Kedarka is Chayiv. So we bring a right from a brisa that any fashion of this horrible type of Isser is going to be a violation. Amalei Ravina L'Rava. What about Hama'ar B'Zocher? There's something called Hara'ah. Rashi tells us is actually a machlokes what hara is. Either it means the crown of the aver goes in, but not the whole aver, or it means the crown doesn't even go in, but the tip touches the opening. One of those things are considered hara. It's not a gemarbia. So what happens if someone who's being mizana with a male and he did one of these two activities? Now, what would the halacha be? Frankly, I don't understand. What is your shaila? When it talks about penetrating a male, it uses the word mishkevei isha. So therefore, it should be exactly like the violation if someone is mizana with a woman. And of course, hara is considered kigmar bia lagabi violating the isur's nus. So what is even this shaila? Hamar is bezocher mishkevei isha ella hamar bebehema. The shaila was, what if someone only does hara by a behema? Amalei, I'll tell you what the answer is. By the pasuk of someone being mizana with his aunt. It says achos aviv v'achos imoy. Those there's a prohibit. Normally, we know in Achri Moshe mentions all of the lavin, yes, harais, and in Kedoshim it mentions all of the oinshim. But there's one halacha that's sticking out. It's in Kedoshim and it's a hashara, even though the hashara was already given in Parashas Achri Moshe. And it says in Parashas Kedoshim, ve'erbas achos imcha v'achos avicha loy segale ki asheira. This pasuk is in Kedoshim. It's out of place because already in Nachrimois there's two psukim there. One directly addressing Ervas Achosimecha and one directly addressing Ervas Achosavicha. So this pasuk is an extra pasuk. So since we don't need this pasuk, and there it uses Kesherei Hera, there it prohibits Hara as well. So this pasuk is extra. The Lloyd Tzricha, the Iskish L'Hara Denida. There's a hekesh of all arayas to the Isser of Nida, and by Nida it says Hara is Aser. So we already know that in all arayas Hara is Aser because we learn it out of Gzer Shava from Nida, and there it says a lashon of Ki She'erei Hera, and we learn Einin Legufe Yosy B'Hekesh Nida Kachol Shar Arayas Kedeprecious Tenei Ein Lebeiva. So by Nida we already learn all of the, because the lashon of pasuk by Nida is kol asher yasa mikol hato'evois ha'el. So the Torah specifically compares all of the arayis, and we already know by Nida that the hara is aser. So that's how we know by all arayis hara is aser. So why did the Torah repeat by achos aviv achos imay as well that hara is aser? Therefore, teneu inyin la ra debehema. Let's say that when it says by achos avicha and achos imecha kesheira hera, that's actually telling you a halacha legabe hadara of a behem. Gemara, of all places, why would the Torah decide to use ervas achos imcha and ervas achos avicha to tell you there a halacha of a ra regarding a behema? It's a little unusual place to tell us this halacha. Michti behema mechayve misas bezdin. A behema, if someone's mizana with a behema, he gets skila. Achos avicha and achos imecha are only a chayve krisos. So lamalei dichsiv la radi da gabe chayve krisos. Why did the Torah pick a erva that's a chayve krisos to tell us the halacha of hara by shoychevim behema, which is a chiv skila lichtlevei gabe chayve misas bezdin. The ligmar chayve misas bezdin may chayve misas bezdin. Why didn't the Torah stick this extra Keshera Hera by another type of arayis that involves the Chiv Misa, and that's what the Makar of Behema should be. Zokt Gemara, I'll tell you why. Hoyel v'chule kra l'drasha hu da'asa ksiva nami milsa l'drasha. This whole pasuk does not belong. This whole pasuk is redundant because it was all already discussed in Parashas Achri Moshe. So since this whole pasuk is an extra pasuk, the Torah uses it as like a utility pasuk to accomplish a whole bunch of different loose ends to tie up, to tell us a whole bunch of different halachas. That's what the Torah used this pasuk for. So it's not some pasuk that's relevant. And then Agavarcha, it's teaching us the halacha by behema. The whole pasuk was intended just to be teaching us various halachas. Okay, please don't ask me how this is done. What if someone is mizana with himself and he does hara on himself? What would the halacha be? Amarle, so Rav Yosy says kabaston. I don't know how the article touches kabaston, but hakmanish kakaparim. It's a irrelevant, not practical shayla. Annoyance. You're an annoyance. Amar Rav Ashi, my tiboilach. Let's get down to the nitty gritty of this shayla. Just in case you wanted to quickly pass it over, we're going to drill down over here. Amar Rav Ashi, my tiboilach. Remember, bikoshi. If there's an erection, it's impossible for him to have an erection and to bend it to go all the way around. It ain't happening. So ki mishkachesla, it would only be possible, even if it could be possible, it could only be possible b'misham mishmeis. If he didn't have an erection, there it would be flexible enough to penetrate himself. So Zok Gemara, now that's a whole new shaila. There's a whole shaila if someone does not have an erection and there's a bia done, is that even considered a bia to create an isser? So Laman the Amar Mishamish Mesh Barayos Potter. If you hold that Mishamish Mesh Barayos, meaning being Mishamish without an erection, that's not a bia. So Hacha Potter. Here would also be Potter. Laman the Amar Chayiv Hacha Mechayiv. Hacha Mechayiv Tarti. Here, if someone was Mizana with himself, he will be Mechayiv twice. Mechayiv HaShoichev uMechayiv HaNishkav. He is playing both parts. He's side the penetrator and side the penetratee. So therefore, that would be the halacha. Okay, let's move on. Boy minei Rab Sheshes. The Shaila was asked of Rab Sheshes. Oivid kechavim habal habehema. What about a goy who is mizana with a behema? So Zokt Rashi. What is the Shaila? Oivid kechavim habal habehema. Shatiskal habehema al yodei. We know a behema doesn't do anything wrong, right? The Mishnah says, what did the behema, if the person was choite, what did the behema do wrong? So the Mishnah offered up, at least the way we learned it, we're going to see some new pshatim in our Mishnah today, but our Mishnah B'Pasha says, two reasons why the animal gets killed. Either because there was a takala done through this behema, it led a person to do an avera, and B, every time someone sees this behema in the future, it will be a bizayon for the person who was killed because of it. So Gaba Yisrael, Parshe b'masnisin trei taimei. Our Mishnah gave us two reasons why the animal should be killed. A, lefisha bas la'adam takal al yana, and B is v'shaloi tehei oiveres b'shuk la'achazman v'yoimru. This is the animal that Yankel was killed because of the Hainu color. But the Gabe oivet kechavim, you only have one of those two components. Takala ika, there is a takala, the b'nei noyach, who's a rural harayis. A benoich is not either allowed to be mizana with a behema, and therefore one component, as listed in the Mishnah, is there. It wasn't the kala. A goy did an aver because of it, but kala in leka, there is no bizyonis to the goy. You know why? Because darkoin bekach ve'ena misbaishin. A goy is bechalal not embarrassed that this is what he did. Maybe they even use it as a medal of honor. So you don't have this second factor. So if you only have one of the two factors, is that a reason why we would still kill the behemoth? And even if you're going to say there is bizyonis, where the Torah is not looking to protect the goy from bizyonis, the Torah is looking to protect only the yid from bizyonis. So that was a Gemara Shaila. Boy minem Rab Sheshes oivet lechav mabala behema mao takala v'kalain beinon v'acha takala ika kalain laka adil matakala af al pish ein kalain. So really, the Shaila is in our Mishnah: do you need both reasons, or is one reason enough? One more Sheshes to Nisua. We actually have a brisa that can answer our Shaila, because the brisa says as follows: we're talking about an Asherah tree that people were oivet avodah zarah. Ma ilanosh she'ein oichlin ve'ein shoysin ve'ein merichin. A ilan is a completely inanimate object. As Rashi says, ilanosh al asher diksivu tisrafun be'esh. Amra Torah, the Torah still says, Hashres, Sroif v'chalei, destroy this Asherah tree that people were over the Isra of Avodah Zarah with. Why? Hoyel ubala adam takala al yadan. Since a person was over an Avera because of it. So Amasa es chavera midarke chayim ladarke misa. If someone is going to be mizana with his friend, al achas kama v'kama, surely he should be killed. Let's have a look at Rashi. The Torah says you destroy the tree. Alma, what do you see from this brisa? Takala afal pi shein kalain. There's a takala by an ilan, but there's no kalain. The ashera lo'ivit kechavim ein kalain ela takala shafem huzru alavodis kechavim. So we're talking about the ashera of a goy that we destroy. You destroy that avodah zarah of a goy. Why? It's only because of the color. It can't be because of color. Moti, what does it mean? Hamasa es chaveri midak chayim midak kamisa. What type of avera was it talking about? So we're talking about a mesis. Surely should get killed. But al kalponim, what you see clearly is that takala alone should be adequate a reason to destroy the animal. So we're trying to be pushed to shaila that was asked Rab Sheshes that even if a guy is mizana with a behema, the behema should be killed. So the Gemara responds, Elamayata oivit kechavim. Hamishtacha levehemtoi. What if a guy is not mezana with his animal? He bows down to his animal. So that's also takala. Are you going to tell me titzar ubiktala? The animal will become usher, and then we will kill the animal? It can't be. You know why? Because mi'ika midi the liyisrael loyasar. Is it possible to have the same scenario by a yid where the animal wouldn't be usher, or the ovid kachavim usher? And Rashi tells us a live animal will never become usher due to avodah zarah by a yid. As Rashi says, Mika midi de Yisrael lemitzer behemtoi b'ishtachava asoi. If a yid bows down to his behemah, it becomes possible to be brought as a carbon, but the animal is still muter ba'anoah. The animal can be used. The kaimalon balei chaim ein nesarin mipnei avodas kachavim. A bachai will never become usher because of avodah zarah. The midi itzrich kar lemeser nevad lekarbon gavoya. Since there's a special pasuk that says that an animal that you bow down to, you cannot bring as a carbon, the mechlal lahedit shari. It must be that lahedit it's mutter and it's not a shabbadah. So how could you tell me if a guy bows down to behemta, it should be usher and should be killed because of takala? Why would we treat a guy more stringently than we would treat a yid? Zok to Gemara. So Ibazah Yisrael Gufa Litzer. Maybe when someone bows down to an animal, maybe his animal should become usher, midi to have a revia. Just like if someone was boil the animal will get killed. As Rashi says, Yisrael nami titzer midi to have a revia. The asrina law umikta law, right? If a Yisrael is boiled the animal becomes usher but non, the animal is killed. If you're going to now suggest that someone who is bows down to an animal, the animal becomes usher. We just said a moment ago it cannot possibly be that the animal is usher, because then why do we need a pasuk to usher this same animal? If it's usher ba'na, you surely can't bring it as a carbon. I'm sorry.
Circle.
Why?
Because we were trying to figure out if there's no by Ravi there's both there's kolon and
Correct, but now the Gemara is at the step where it says that the kol alone is enough, right? We brought the raya from the Asherah that the kol alone would be enough.
No, we say so gufa litzer immediately have a Ravia. Ravia is different because there's two reasons.
But by Ravia there's two.
Why would you learn you saw gufa litzer for
because at this point we're saying that the kol alone will do it. There, the gaver loy mikdal. If it's in a case where you wouldn't kill the person, why? Because there's no edim, and therefore and therefore the animal doesn't get killed. There we have a special pasuk that it's still usher to a gvoya. The revev and nirva. So this might be addressing what you're asking, Rashi. The revev and nirva usher lukra gvoya. The Torah ushers these animals gvoya. The kashla lamalikra. And we also want to know why do you need a special pasuk to usher those? They're getting killed. They're usher but not. The Gemara says, speaking in the case for ukim b'nirbal pe'erech dal pe'abayim, where it wouldn't get killed. So Zok to Gemara. So Yisrael gufay litzer midi to have a ravi. Amar Abaye zeh kloinoi meruba v'zeh kloinoi muat. So what did Abaye answer? I think that's what you wanted to say. Amar Abaye zeh kloinoi meruba sheyesh kan koloin she'avar al mitzvahs koinoi and v'koloin shegina atzmai b'davar maguna. By Revia, there's two levels of humiliation. Merely doing such a terrible avera has a factor of koloin, but being mizana with an animal, that's like really serious. But v'zeh koloin david kachavim is muat. Doing avodah zarah, yes, it's a humiliating thing, but it's not nearly being boiled behema. Usvir leila Abaye holds takala v'koloin v'ina. Abaye holds you need both factors. Takala alone is not enough. I think Gemara wanted to make a right that the color is enough by itself. Therefore, we wanted to say that even a Yisrael who is oived an animal which become usher, you need both. Takala v'koloin v'ina. The less delayed the Rapshashis. He didn't hold of Rapshashis' conclusion from Asherah that the color is enough. Inami svir lekavasei, or maybe he does hold like Rapshashis. The mitoch shekloina meruba. Maybe there is a lot of klein, But you still won't learn from Ilonois that it becomes Osir Bano. Okay, so Abai said Zeklai the Zeklai Mud. That's why there's a distinction between Revia and Oibid of Yosy. Frank the Gemara Bare Ilonois the Ein Klein and Meruba, but Ilonois with the Asherah, where there's not Klein and Meruba because it's not Revia yet. But Amr Torah Hashchei Sroy V'Chalei. The Torah says do destroy the tree. Zok Gemara, that's not a right. Because Bibalechayim Kamrinon, the Torah is much less eager to destroy a Balchai, even a Behema, than it is to destroy a Tzemeach like a tree. Bibalechayim Kamrinon, Techos Rachmana Alayu. Akiva asked yesterday, I don't understand. If you have the Svar of Takala, so then if someone rapes somebody else, the victim should go killed because it's Takala V'Kalei. So you see, the Gemara says, you don't just kill anybody because of takala v'kalei. An animal maybe you would kill, but not a human. So here we see even a distinction between an animal who's a balchai and a tzemeach. A tree will become also with merely the takana and a weaker type of kalai, because it's not a live thing. But an animal, that the Torah is not going to kill so fast unless it's a kloinoi meruba, such as Revia. The chas rachmana, shehitrich lahem bezin shel esher mishloisha. Do you know in order to kill an animal, we said you need the same type of bezin to kill the animal as you needed to kill the perpetrator. You need a bezin of 23. So you see the Torah requires a lot of factors, a lot of T's crossed and I's dotted in order to kill an animal. The Torah doesn't have those many restrictions when it's a question of destroying a tree. Rava Amar, so Abai makes that distinction between Revia and Avodah Zarah. In order to kill a Balchai, you need that the Balchai should have caused both a takala as well as a kala. Rava Amar, Amar Torah, Behema Nehenis Me'avera Tehare. You know why Revia, the animal gets killed? Because the Behema also had a no. But if you serve the animal, you bow down to the animal does not get any hana from that. As Rashi says.
How do we know that?
How do we know that it doesn't have enough and covered? Or how do we know
that does have hana, doesn't have hana?
I'm not sure. I was afraid you were going to ask that. Zok to Gemara, Lahachi lo yalfina nevet me'nirva. You know why you cannot compare nevat to nirva? Mishum deloy nehenes ha-behema me'avera. The behema gets no satisfaction from the fact that someone bowed down to it. Why? So maybe when a guy is mizana with an animal, that's when you kill it. But lav dafka when you bow down to an animal. Okay? Zok to Gemara. What about Ilanos? The ain't a for sure an Ilan does not have any enough from the fact that someone is serving it. You nevertheless, so tomorrow I'll make the same distinction we made before. It takes a lot more to destroy an animal than it would take to destroy a tree, and you need to have a much higher takala and kaloin factor. Tashma. So now we have this shaila as to you need both or only one. As Rashi says, Tashma, the takala beloy kaloin maktil. We want to bring a raya that you don't need kaloin at all. Takala is enough to justify killing the animal. Remember, our Mishnah offered two reasons, right? One was takala and one was kaloin. However, the Havarasha Mishnah Yisera, the first reason that the Mishnah gave, which was takala, really we don't need that reason. You know why? Because it's already repeated mufurish in the second reason. The Katani Seifa, in the second reason, what does the Mishnah say? Davar acher. Let's actually go back and look at the words of the actual Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Davar achar, shaloite behema iveris b'shuk, v'yomer zuhi sheniskal. So yes, there is the coloring factor, but we're also mentioning that someone had that color. Sheniskal al yada. So the second answer actually incorporates the first answer as well. So Zokt Rashi, umehach seifa mashma de tervayu ika. The second reason that the Mishnah offers actually includes both koloin and takala. The katani v'yoimru zuhi hainu koloin and then Vishaniskal Hanu Takalos Avera. So we have both factors wrapped in to the second reason that the Mishnah gives. Yet the Mishnah, the Tana still saw the need to put in the first reason. Shemamina Takala Gredasa Dafkin Nokat Veloy Koloin Keloy Novid Kachavim. You see clearly that from the first reason that the Mishnah gave why the animal is killed, you see takala independent of any koloin is enough to kill, such as serving the animal. The leka lememer tana reisha takala v'seifa koloin lememer the tevaya ba'inon, because the seifa shemamina you know both from the seifa. So therefore, the reisha must indicate that takala alone, even without koloin, is adequate to kill the animal. Tashma. So now we'll see the Gemara inside. Dover acher shaloi tei v'hema iveres b'shuk v'yoyimru zuhi shenizkal plodni al yada. My love, turning on to Amin Beis. Mida seifa takala v'kolin. Since the second reason given in the Mishnah includes both factors, reisha, the first reason given in the Mishnah, is clearly takala b'loy kolin. How do you have takala b'loy kolin? How do you have a case of revia where there's only takala and there's no kolin? It's automatically there's both factors when there's someone who's mizana with an animal. Zok Gemara, you know what the case might be? V'heichadami ovid kachavim habal abhema. Maybe the first half of the Mishnah where it talks about takala only, maybe that's referring to even a case where a goy, right? We had a shayla, if a goy is mizana with an animal, what do you do with it? There's no kolin, there's only takala. Maybe that's what you see, Gufa, from the first shot in the Mishnah, that the Tana is telling us that even a guy who's Bala Behema, you would kill the Behema. Because, and even though there's no factor of Koloin, only a factor of Takala. So, Malloy, that's not Pshat in our Mishnah. Seifa is Takala Koloin, as you said, but Reisha, Hokamash Malom, exactly the opposite. Da Afilu Koloin Beloy Takala Nami Mechayvi. You know what the Reish is speaking about? It's speaking about kala and beloy takala. Now, how does that fit into the words of the Mishnah? The Mishnah says, "Beferish, someone is niskal al yodei." We'll have to get there in a second. But what would be the case where there's kala and no takala? The hechadami Yisrael haba ala behema b'shaygig. If a yid was ba ala behema b'shaygig, where there's no takala, because b'shaygig someone doesn't get killed, but there's still a huge kala. That's what the Mishnah is telling us, that even a Yisrael that's born a behema b'shoigig, even that the animal gets destroyed. Now the problem is the words simply don't say koloin.
Why would the animal get destroyed? Because what?
Because of koloin alone.
What's the koloin?
That a man slept with him. Maybe we say, "Oh, that's the animal who I'm saying."
How would you know? He didn't get killed. He doesn't get.
I guess the oilam will know. The oilam will know. So. You like that animal? It's good looking. It must be Yaakov slept with it, right? So let's have a look. But the problem is the words of the Mishnah doesn't say that, right? Look at the words of the Mishnah. The words of the Mishnah says. I'm sorry, I have to go back another block. The words of the Mishnah says. How in heavens are you going to fatach that as meaning koloin only, right? That's the challenge that we're going to have. Zokt Rashi. Rashi is going to explain that for us. Let me just get to the right page. Zokt Rashi. Seifa Avada Tervayu Ika. The Emelach, the Kula Masnisim be Yisrael Kamari. Let's suggest that the whole mission is referring to a Yid that was Nishal. Vashmin and Reisha, the Av al Gav, the Lek el Achada, Kala and Beloita Kala. And what would the case be where there's Kala and not the Kala? Kala Yisrael Shagay. Kisavar mutter, he thought it was mutter. The Ika Kaloin, because Shagina Atzma B'davar Maguna. There's a huge Kaloin because he's with an animal. But with the Kala Lekal because he's not getting killed. So now Rashi has to massage, how in the world could you make the Mishnah that literally says Takala, how could you say that means Kaloin? Umay Takala Takatani. What it means is Shabas La Adam Takala Al Yidei Takala is Kaloin Kala. It's a stickle kvetching and massaging. But we're touching the Koloin is the Takala. Why would Gemara want to make such a kvetch in the Lashon Mishnah? Because we're trying to avoid something. When Nika look machi v'loy took Maresha by the Chum of Sefer Yisrael, because we don't want the Mishnah to be speaking in the Resha about one case, referring to a goy, and in the Sefer referring to a Yisrael. So in order to make the Mishnah consistent throughout, yes, we'll have to fetch it a little. Okay, Gewaltig. Zok to Gemara, Uchedaboyer of Hamnuna. It's similar to the Shaila that Rav Hamnuna has, where there's Koloin and no Takala. The boy Rav Hamnuna, Yisrael Abal Abheim B'Shoy. So there's Koloin, but no Takala. Mahu. Takala v'Koloin v'inon. You need both these factors in order to condemn the animal. V'hacha Koloin Ika, but Takala Leka, because it was B'Shoy. Oidilma Koloin Afal Pisha in Takala. If there's merely Koloin, that's enough to justify the destruction of the animal. Rabbi Yosef Toshma. Rabbi Yosef wanted to bring a raya. Bas Shaloi Shanim V'Yemechad. A girl who's 3 years old. Zok Rashi Kim Lahula Rabbanon Teshuv Ein B'Suleh Chayshvin. Once a girl is Bas Shaloi Shanim, if she's Nevelas, her B'Sulim will not grow back. However, when she's younger, her B'Sulim will grow back, and because of that, we consider a female Ru'uya Labiyah when she's 3 years and 1 day old. So therefore, Miskadeshes Bebiyah, you could be Mekadesh Bebiyah. How would it work out that she would get Kedushin through Biyah? She can't marry herself off. So Rashi says, Al Yidei Aviyah. A father could marry off a Ketana. In Masra Aviyah La'acher, Lo V'yaleh L'Shem Kedushin. If a father gives his daughter over to a man, that the man will be boiler for Kedushin, that Kedushin will work, and she's Mekudeshes Daraisa. The Av Zakoi Bevitoi, the Kiddusha. The father has that schus to marry his daughter off. Tichsiv is Biti Nesati L'Shazeh. But what if she's a Yisayma? There she wouldn't be able to be Mekadesh herself with Bia. Aval hi atzma ve'ima ba'achel kishi Yisayma ein ba Kiddushay Torah. It would be impossible for her to ever become Mekudeshes Midaraisa. Ela Rabbanon hu detikon. But v'lohitzrichu get elamiyim ba'oma. In a case where a minor, a little girl marries herself off, or her mother or her brothers marry her off, that's not really recognized as a Kedushin Daraisa, and therefore get's not required means enough. But our brisa that says Miskadeshes B'Biyah, meaning is a Daraisa, that's referring to if her father married her off. And if Rachman al she died without any, her husband died without any children, then her brother-in-law could just be boiler, and it would be considered a biyah, and therefore he would be kind to her. And now he doesn't have to give her chalitza anymore. If he wants to get rid of her, he just gives her a get. Problem is she can't be makabel a get because she's too young. But if her father is still alive, could be her father could give her a get. Let's see Rashi. So if she still had a father and she was a Ketana, her father would be makabel a get for her. But if she didn't have a father, then he wouldn't be able to give her a get. Okay? He would have to wait till she becomes an adult. And the chayav and aleh b'shemeshes. If someone was mizana with her, it's considered a biyah, and that person would get killed because he was mizana with an eshes. As Rashi says, v'chayav and aleh and kibal aviyah kedushin ubal achar. He will be chayav aleh b'shemeshes. The biyah he was a biyah. Aval pachos mibal shalosh. If someone was mizana with a married woman, but this married woman is less than 3 years old. Even though if the father was makabel kesef kedushin for a girl who's even less than 3 years old, the girl has a status of an ish, but you can't be boiler because it's not considered a biyah. Even though she's an ish, because kesef kedushin worked for her as a small little girl, but it's not a biyah. Okay, and umitama es boiler letami mishkav tachton ke'olin. The halacha is, if one touches a nida, one becomes tamei for the day. But if someone is boil a nida, one becomes tamei for a week. So this is considered, if a woman becomes a nida, yes, we're talking about a little 3-year-old girl becoming a nida, that is possible. And someone was boil her while she was a nida, that person will become tamei for 7 days. Another thing is, nisas l'koyin, if she was nisas l'koyin, since she could be neve'elas to the kohen because she's 3 years old, it's called a proper nisuin, and therefore echelas b'truma. Because we know even though midaraisa, a woman who's mikudeshes to a kohen can eat truma, but we're makbid only to allow her to eat truma once she's a nesua. So this is the kohen echelas b'truma, and ba'aleh echod min apsulin. If someone who was puzzled was ba'aleh, again is considered a biyah, and therefore she's permanently puzzled min akuna. And the imba'aleh Echad mikol ha'arayis hamurish b'Torah. Any arayis, any erba that's ba'aleh, it's considered a bia mumsin al yoda, but she's still a minor. The hipatura, she will be potter because she's still a minor. So these are all the ramifications of what a fully legal bia can accomplish. Freik the Gemara. Now we're going to analyze this price. It said in ba'aleh echad mikol harayis hamurish b'Torah, that thing that was ba'aleh will be chayiv misa, right? Freik the Gemara. Echad mikol harayis v'afilu behema. So are you telling me if a behema is ba'aleh, that's also one of their rayis, will the animal get killed as well? Let's think about it. V'hacha the koloinika. There's definitely a koloin. If a behema is ba on a human, that's a huge koloin. But the kololeka, because we're just saying she's patura, she's a minor, and yet the katoni mumtim al yada. So oibazoi, you have a raya that koloin without takala would be enough to kill, and therefore someone who's born a behema b'shoigeg with his koloin and there's not takala, you have a raya that the animal gets killed. Zog to Gemara. This is takala as well. You know why? Even the mazidahi. She's amazing. She wasn't anas. Yes, she's a minor. Maskim, she's a minor. But Lamaisha, she's doing it with intent. Even the mazidahi takala nami ika. Really, be'etzim, she's chayiv. She did an aveira. She's a minor. Yeah, that's a special tour because she's a minor. But that doesn't change the fact that she did an aveira. There's a big chiddush. That a katan who does an aveira, it's an aveira. It's just that he has an exemption from being punished. But don't think it's not considered an aveira at all. So kivin the mazidahi takala nami ika. Why doesn't she get killed? Because v'rachmana hu dechas Allah. Allah didachas abehema loichas. So there's koloin and there's takala, and therefore the animal gets killed. So you don't have a raya that koloin without takala would also justify killing the animal. Amarava tashma. Let's try another raya. Ben teisha shonim v'yoyim echad. Haba al yevimtoi. Ben teisha shonim v'yoyim echad. Remember, we said that's also considered a bia. If he was born his yivama, he would be kinder, because the Torah says by yivam merely a bia makes a kinyan, even though we're talking about minors. But now this 9-year-old finds himself married to his sister-in-law, but he can't give her a get because he's a minor. A minor can't give a get, so now he's stuck. He will not be able to give her a get until he becomes bar mitzvah. And if he's boil a woman who's a nida, he will become tummy for 7 days. Paisel, if he's a Yisrael, she's a kehenes, she will not be able to eat truma anymore because she's married to him. And if he's a kohen and she's a Yisraelis, he won't be able to be Michael or Betruma because he's a cotton. He could parcel a behema from being brought on the mizbeach, viniskelas al yodai, and if he's boil it, it would also get skila. And if he was bought on an adult female, mumtin al yodai, the adult female would receive the death sentence. She would get kanek, but he wouldn't because he's a minor. If he's mizana, there's koloin, but takala leka because he is a minor. And we still see that a person or an animal will get skila because of him. Zoktamar, the same svar we said a moment ago. Even the mezid who, since he is doing it willingly, takala nami ika, we say it is an avera. So it has both factors, the takala and the koloin factor. Why doesn't he get killed? Because v'rachmanahu, the chas iluya had rachmana because he's a minor. Alei didei rachmana abheim alei chas rachmana. So again, we don't have a raya that koloin without takala will allow us to kill the animal. So we're going to bring a third raya. Tashma davar acher shaloi tehei. So this is the second reason that our Mishnah offered up, which we said is two reasons wrapped into one. So if the second reason in the Mishnah, the Mishnah offered up, includes both factors, both takala and koloin, then Reisha is koloin below takala. Let's say the Reisha is only color and not the color, which was the maskana of what we set up above. The Hechadami, how would you have a case of color without the color? Yisrael Abala Behema B'Shoigig. So you have a right that a Yisrael Abala Behema B'Shoigig, where there's only color and no color, you still kill the animal. So you don't have a raya. Loy, save it the color of the color, and maybe it's ratio the color below color, which is really the most posh of the pshat anyway. The Hechadami, it's speaking by Avit Chavim Habala Behema, where you have the color but no color, like Reb Sheshes Shaila we originally had on Amid Aleph. Okay, we will stop here and we'll be Hashem be Mamshech tomorrow. I wanted to call today's shir. Let me shut off the recording. I wanted to call today's shir